A story begins in the year 2020 when our main lead, She's Seol, remembers her high school days back in 2006 when she was 17 years old. And at that time, the most important thing for her was Chagyeon, her classmate, her neighbor, and the boy she was in love with. And she was not shy at all. On the contrary, whenever she could, she made it clear that she loved him and wanted to spend time with him, while Kaeon limited himself to ignoring her, hoping she would leave him in peace. One day at school, Soji forgets to do her math homework and tries to copy from her good friend Jin Haewon, but she gets caught. And as a consequence, they take her to the teacher's room where, to her very bad luck, Kaeon walks in and hears the entire conversation. Her situation becomes even worse when she sees her beloved explaining math to a classmate named Huai, who is much more attractive than her. So determined not to lose the love of her life, our young girl looks for a way to make him fall for her and begins writing a letter. Not just any letter, but the best love letter in history. However, while she is doing a few favors, some boys start bothering her, which causes a huge fight. And here we meet two more characters. Haong, a tough girl who is not afraid to get her hands dirty to help others, and Song, a natural-born swimmer who has never had friends because he is always training. These two, along with Kaeon, rescue Solji and Jin Hyewon, who was also there, and this fight causes the group of classmates to begin a new friendship. So they decide to go together to a karaoke, although the killjoy Chajeon only goes to study. Here we realize that Daeong is in love with Sol, because when they leave the karaoke, he offers to take her home on his bicycle, since some boys stole hers, and he also offers to take her to school the next few days, something that, of course, is not convenient for him, but she has no choice but to accept. At school, Chajeon remembers his father who sadly passed away recently, and Sol tries to cheer him up, but he only looks at her and gives her his bicycle, a gesture that touches her soul. After a few days, the group, except our handsome lead, attends Daeong's swimming competition, and he manages to win the gold medal, which for some reason does not make his coach happy at all, who also happens to be his father. And honestly, I don't know what would make this man happy. The key to the city? A diamond? I don't get it. Anyway, when returning home, Sol decides to take some medicine to Kaeon, who has not been doing well these days, and had to prepare his father's funeral alone since his mother is working abroad. The next day, Chahyun offers to take Sol to school, something she naturally accepts. And once in class, the young girl runs for class president, despite being the opposite of an ideal student. So our protagonist, more focused than ever, prepares a speech with the help of Daesong, who only makes fun of her, and the same attitude is shown by Hui's friend, who doesn't hesitate to mock her right in front of Chajeon. He, instead of defending her, votes for Huiji, saying Solji doesn't have the character to be a president, and feeling betrayed, our young girl hits him on the leg and tries to avoid him as long as possible. Unfortunately, Hui, who becomes class president, orders our protagonist to collect money for some shirts, and what could go wrong, right? Chajeon gives her the money annoyed and then starts talking to Juiji. Later, our girl realizes she left the envelope with the money inside her notebook, which is now in the teacher's room, and desperate she looks for a way to get it back, but nothing works. The school day ends, and the teacher asks Solji to hand over the envelope, and the young girl tries to make an excuse when suddenly Kaeon stands up and gives the envelope to the teacher, which deeply moves Sol's heart. After that gesture, which our cheerful girl interprets as a sign of love, Sol decides to buy him a gift since his birthday is coming, but there is a problem. She doesn't have enough money, but conveniently for the plot, the school organizes a relay race where the prize is 150,000 won, and Sol immediately signs up along with Hong and a classmate named Mi Na-o, so our girl starts training with the help of Da Song, who is not as good as other swimmers. Meanwhile, Hong is practicing for a sack race when suddenly a classmate named Sejayung accidentally knocks her down and injures her ankle, and Shinhin Solji and Daong help her up and take her to the infirmary, where they learn the injury is not serious, but she must use crutches for a few days. Because of this big problem, Solji trains even harder in athletics, and this time the one helping her is none other than Cha Gaeon. Finally, the day of the competition arrives and Sol's class wins the athletics event, taking the prize, and after a few days, the class organizes the theater festival competition, a perfect opportunity for Sol to be near Kaeon. But there will be two groups, her group and the group of Jui, who, as expected, invites Chahyun into her group to play Romeo and Juliet, makes Sol try to convince him to join her team instead, but sadly, he does not respond. And in the end, the teacher assigns him to Hoi's team. What terrible luck. Despite this failure, Sol begins working together with Da Song, who invites her to his house and tells her he lives with his father and his grandmother, who sadly suffers from Alzheimer's. On the day of the presentation, Sol gives a song to Mina and Yo for the play, but they accidentally play it during the performance of Chajeon and Hui, and to make things even worse, the song is a recording of Sol complaining about Juiji. Embarrassed, the young girl hides in the dressing room with Daong when suddenly Chaeon approaches and, in a slightly annoyed tone, tells her she's a disaster before leaving. And ouch, that must have hurt. Who needs enemies when you have friends who play your private audios on loudspeakers in public? Then Monday arrives, and with it, Solgi returns to school, where several classmates tease her as usual. And Da Sung, like a true gentleman, defends her, but he cannot stay by her side all the time because he also has to train. Meanwhile, Chajeon seems to feel somewhat guilty about what he said, and after school, he waits for Sol, but she does not appear. Yet when he returns home, he is surprised to find that his mother and younger brother have come back back for his birthday, though even with this, he is more focused on Sol, who in turn starts thinking about transferring schools after so much chaos. The next morning, Daeyoung, trying to make her feel a little better, secretly takes her to the pool, which he filled with beach balls and floaties, and it is such a sweet and thoughtful plan. But sadly, they are caught by Daesung's father, who punishes him severely that same night. The next day, Sol and her parents go to school to talk with the teacher about the possible transfer, when suddenly Cha enters the room with the excuse of looking for some books, and he uses the chance to stay alone with Sol and ask her not to leave, and honestly, but who understands them? After this gesture, Sol regains her hope and love for Cha and keeps a seat for him in natural sciences class. Now a new year begins, which means new adventures, and later during break, Jin-hyun shows his classmates a poster announcing auditions for a reality show called Korea Sings, and our Sol-ji wants to participate, but she must first pass the preliminary rounds. At home, her parents have a huge argument, and the next day they leave, abandoning their poor daughter alone, so Shajan notices this and goes out to accompany her, letting her cry on his shoulder. Luckily, her parents return the next day happier and more in love than ever. Changing the subject, the whole friend group decides to spend the night together watching the shooting stars. And after that, they play the classic truth or dare game, where each one writes a secret on a small paper, puts it on the table, and they shuffle them randomly. Excited, Sol writes her secret and picks one of the papers, and when she opens it, she surprisingly finds a phrase that says, "I like Shin Sol Y." After a few days, our girl wants to invite Chajion to see Manchester United, so she starts helping at home, hoping her parents will give her money to buy the tickets. On the other hand, Dong participates in an important swimming competition, and after coming second previously, he now feels very pressured. But fortunately, Sol-ji is in the audience cheering for him, filling him with determination until he wins the competition. And after receiving the gold medal, Dong declares to the media that his victory belongs to her, as he looks at her with great tenderness. The interviewers ask him if she is his girlfriend, and the rumor of them dating spreads quickly through the school, which, as you can guess, annoys Chajion. When the weekend arrives, Sol looks for a part-time job to buy the tickets and ends up in a burger shop where she finds Dasong working, and she takes the opportunity to ask him what he wrote in the truth game, and he, scared, lies saying he wrote that he loved hamburgers, making Sol-ji happy, because then by default it would mean Shajan was the one who wrote "I like Shin Sol-ji," though apparently that is not the case. Or maybe it is. What do you think? Very in love, excited, and with money in her pockets, Sol gives Shajan a shirt to go to Manchester United. But he not only rejects the invitation, he also buys her the shirt because that day is also Sol-ji's birthday. So he rejected the match tickets to take her to the Dream concert, where all her favorite singers will perform. However, when he arrives at the concert, he calls Sol and learns she is outside the football stadium, so he goes there, and just when they are about to enter, he discovers the match tickets are fake, so they sit outside. And that is when she asks him what he wrote in the truth game, and he shows her that he picked his own paper which says, "I don't want to play this game." And poor girl, she never stops getting hit by one disappointment after another. And now that she knows Chango liked her, it becomes clear who wrote the note, Da Song. Because of this, the next day she tries to stay away from him as long as possible, and later she tells everything to Hong, who advises her to give him a chance because Dong is an amazing boy. But Sol does not deny it. She is simply too in love with Kaeon to even think of another boy, so she decides to confront him, and he nervously says what he wrote that day was only a joke and then pretends his father is calling him so he can leave without raising suspicion. Changing topics again, an important school debate is approaching, and a classmate of Sol-ji starts mocking her for her low academic performance. And Jia hears the conversation and gives Sol-ji a few tips so she can do the debate well, which not only helps her pass but even earns praise from her teacher. Back in class, the teacher confiscates a book and an MP3 player that Dong had lent Sol-ji for a week, and it is a complicated situation, but Dong accepts her apology and also hands out hand warmers to the whole group so he can give one to Sol without looking suspicious. And when Shajan sees this, he leaves the cafeteria, followed quickly by our girl. But in another turn of events, a rumor spreads about a deadly flu affecting the students at school, and at that moment, Sol sneezes, scaring the rest of her classmates. So she goes to the infirmary while all the other students return home. Meanwhile, Shajan he goes to the teacher's room to recover the book the teacher confiscated from our protagonist, and then enters the announcement room to read the book through the speakers so that Sol-ji can listen to it. And honestly, am I the only one confused by these mixed signals? Do you like the girl or not? Later winter approaches? Well, no, it actually arrives, and with it Christmas. And because of that, our romantic protagonist wants to knit a scarf for Shajeon, but only after seeing Jui making one for him. So she asks her father for help, who finds around the house a love letter written by his own daughter, making her mother panic, and ask Cheon if by any chance Sol has a boyfriend, and she answers she does not know. The next day, the young girl sees Juigi giving a wrapped box to Kaeon, which makes her anxious. And later, Sol-ji sees that same box inside her beloved's backpack, and the next day, Sol sees Kaeon wearing a new scarf, and he notices her anger but doesn't know why. That same day, it starts snowing, so on the way home, he wraps Sol with his scarf, but she tells him she doesn't want to wear something Huiji gave him, and he explains the scarf is from his mother, and relieved she gives him a Christmas card and a bracelet since she couldn't finish making the scarf. After all this, 2 years pass, class, and now it is 2008, and our characters are in their last year of school, and Sol dreams of finally confessing her love to Kaon. So she goes out to buy a few things with Dong, and later in the classroom, everyone gathers to make a barbecue. And during this time, Solji follows Chaeon everywhere, while on the other side, Hwan tries to make Haong fall for him, even though she only has eyes for the school nurse, Mr. Lee. Minutes later, Hayoung, Jin Hyewon, and our protagonist decorate the place for the big confession. But when she approaches Chaeon, Juiji runs to him and hugs him. And in that moment, Sol steps out of her hiding place and sees them. And suddenly, Daong arrives and offers his shoulder for her to cry on. But unfortunately, Shagan also sees them surrounded by all the decorations. Da-song takes Sol home where Shajan is waiting. She refuses to talk to him, while Daong walks up to him and confesses that he loves Sol and doesn't want to see her suffer. But trying to fix things, our handsome Lid tries to win her back by giving her a bag of candy, which she rejects. And to make things worse, Solji has a small argument with Jui, and suddenly Chajan intervenes and takes Jui's side, which makes Sol call him an idiot before leaving angrily. And poor girl dealing with this boy who cannot decide or confess. Anyway, in another situation, Juiji sneaks into the teacher's room to look for something when suddenly the principal and teacher catch her, and she explains it is not what it looks like, but they still accuse her of wanting to steal the upcoming exam. Meanwhile, Daong is at the hospital because of pain in his shoulder, and the doctor tells him he won't be able to compete for a while, which worries him because he was training for the Olympics. The next day, Chajeon sees Solji and Da-song together, which saddens him a little. And seeing him in that state, Yin Hye-won decides to help and brings Solji to the library where she finds Chajeon, who sits next to her and gently brushes her hair aside. Later, Mina and Yo tell the young girl and Hae that if they find a four-leaf clover, they can make their romances come true. So excited, Haong finds one and takes it to the infirmary for Mr. Lee, and Jin Hyewon sees this and had no idea she liked him. So when he returns to the classroom, he yells at a poor girl who is talking about four-leaf clovers and storms out. Like, relax, brother. A week passes and the school drama keeps growing, and this time Huiji faints outside the bathroom, and when her mother arrives, she blames Mr. Lee and forces him to resign. And after this, Chajeon tells Sol that Hui suffers from depression, and he has stayed by her side to help, and he also clarifies she's not his girlfriend, which comforts our protagonist. Meanwhile, Jin Hyewon gathers courage and finally confesses his feelings to Jong, declaring in front of everyone that he loves her with all his heart, and she only smiles. But switching the focus to Dae-song, whose injuries sadly have worsened, the doctors tell him it is impossible for him to compete soon, and desperate, he asks the doctor to prescribe painkillers so he can participate in the national selection. But ethically, the doctor refuses. Changing topics again, Mr. Lee leaves for the United States, but not before saying goodbye to the teachers and especially to Hayoung. Meanwhile, Daong and Chaeon compete for Solji's attention in the billiard room. But unfortunately for our Galan, Da-song is very good at this game and easily wins, taking Sol out of Ji's reach. Sadly, they meet later to chat and agree to study together for university exams, something that of course doesn't make Kaon happy. And soon the exam season arrives, filling our group with doubts about what to study. And Sol already has an option, drawing, while Shajan tells his mother he wants to study medicine at the same university Sol plans to attend. And even though she doesn't like it, he stays firm. On the other hand, Hae-jong visits Shin Hyewon, who hasn't gone to school since his confession, and he refuses to talk to her, which obviously makes her angry. Meanwhile, Da-song is at the pool feeling sad when suddenly he gets a call telling him his grandmother has disappeared. And with Sol and Kaon's help, they go out to search for her. And when they finally find her, she does not recognize him as her grandson. And the sweet grandmother with Alzheimer's starts talking about Da-song and how he will soon become a swimming champion. And those words make him cry because he knows how much it would mean to his grandmother to see him win. So he decides to ignore the doctor's advice and train again. Kids, do not try this. If you are injured, listen to your doctor because physical health is more important than any medal. But before doing this crazy thing, he meets with Sol and finally confesses that he has loved her for 2 years, but he knows she is in love with someone else, so he promises he will stop liking her. What a perfect book title. I promise to stop liking you, and 100 other lies we tell ourselves. And after all those broken hearts, the university entrance exams end, and with that, a new stage in their lives begins, and Sol gets the highest score she has ever gotten. But sadly, it is not enough because she is not accepted into the same university as Kaong, Haong, and Shinwon, and those two have fixed their issues and are now a couple. Our Galan tries to cheer Solg up by telling her he will help. He tells her he will help her study for next year's exam, while Da-song encourages her not to give up during an interview they do after a competition. And in the following days, Chajeon studies without rest while Solji works on her art until late at night. Another year passes, meaning a new chance to take that exam, and luckily this time she manages to pass it. So she and her friends go out to celebrate and drink a lot of alcohol, and when the party ends, Sol, already extremely drunk, returns home with Chaewon, who, taking advantage of the fact that she won't remember anything the next day, finally kisses her at last. And although I admit I'm still Team Da-song, well, that's how these dramas go. Later, during a party at the university, Shajan calls Sol my girlfriend, which of course excites her. And afterwards, she asks him to repeat the word girlfriend, which he does without hesitation, without telling her about the kiss, but who even cares? Sol is finally happier than ever. The next day, they finally have their first real date, and to impress him, she wears a dress that shows her shoulders, and he, as a sign of affection, gives her a kiss on the cheek. Then they go to the library where a guy takes a picture of them and puts it on the cover of the school pamphlet. And other girls, after seeing the pamphlet, start making fun of Solji, saying she's not good enough to be with Kaon. Who do these girls think they are? Anyway, changing the topic, Yin Hee-won must undergo emergency surgery, and at first he doesn't want to tell Hong anything, and even ends their relationship so she won't find out. But she discovers the truth and stays by his side throughout the process. Long live love. And returning to our main couple, which sadly does not include Song, sorry, I still can't get over it, they begin to drift apart because of studies and university responsibilities, with Shajon working at the hospital and being recommended by his professor for a training program in the United States, while Sol gets an interview for an internship at a big company. After a few days, she attends the interview, but unfortunately fails because she was sick. And at that moment, an art professor appears and offers to find her a good job, but then touches her inappropriately, frightening Solji, who hits him on the head and runs away. And to make things even worse, she learns about Kaon's trip to the United States. So she ends their relationship that same day. Oh no, how sad. If only Dayoung found out. Anyway, a month passes, and although Kaon is about to leave, he tries to contact Sol, but she completely refuses to see him, so he removes the bracelet she had given him long ago. And here we make another time jump, this time 3 years, and Sol now works as a digital artist while Kaon returns to Korea, and they meet again in the hospital because Solji's father is admitted there, and when he sees her, Argalan tries to talk to her, but she ignores him and leaves with Dae-sung. After a few days, the group of friends meets in a restaurant, a perfect moment for Sol and Shajon to talk, so the others leave little by little until only the two of them remain alone. Shagon offers to drive her home, she gets in his car, and they ride in silence. And when they arrive, he asks if she regrets her decision and if she knows why he came back, and she answers that she doesn't want to know, but he gathers courage and kisses her. The next day, Sol Jae brings him a tray of food as thanks for helping in her father's surgery and takes the chance to talk about their breakup and his intentions to return. Later, Hae and Shin Heen celebrate their wedding, and several of their old schoolmates attend, including Huyi, who takes the time to explain to Sol what happened the day she planned to confess to Kaon and tells her he always loved her above all. When the bouquet is thrown, Shajon catches it and gives it to his beloved annoying poor Da-song, who, as I said before, lied to himself and obviously has never stopped liking Solji. A few days later, Cheon meets Shin Hyun and asks for help to win Sol's heart again. And this will be very difficult because for 3 years she suffered a lot after losing him. But even so, he and Haong invite both of them to a small gathering, but unfortunately, Cha Jeon receives a call from the hospital and must leave immediately. Da-song takes advantage of this moment to confess his love to Solly, but she, a bit embarrassed, rejects him because she only sees him as a friend. Life is so unfair. Heartbroken, Daeong goes drinking with Jin Hyun and finds Cha Jeon there, and Cha Jeon confesses that he loves Solji and regrets abandoning her during these years. And at that moment, Da-song shows him that he is on a call with Sol, meaning she heard everything he just said. Minutes later, the young woman arrives at the bar and stays beside Kaon, and he uses the moment to apologize again and ask for a second chance, but Sol tells him she needs to think about it and leaves. Days later, Sol goes to the hospital, and there she meets Shaon, who proposes to her right there on the spot. And although earlier she said she needed time to think, in the end she accepts. Very emotional. And since Chaehyun is free today, the two of them go back to Solji's house to talk for a while, and for the first time in a long time, they both say they love each other. During the following days, Kaon records a video talking about his relationship with Soli, saying everything began when she first told him she liked him, and she followed him everywhere, which made him curious. And he did things he never imagined doing, like entering the teacher's room to recover her book. And even though he loved her, he admits there were many times when everything she did annoyed him. But that changed the moment she was about to transfer to another school, because at that time, he could not sleep and lived with the constant pain of thinking he would never see her again. And little by little, he realized she made him happy. And that was why he cared for her so much, until the day they had their first kiss. Everything seemed fine until they broke up, and he thought he could win her back, but soon realized it would be difficult, and his selfishness followed him during those 3 years until he saw her again. And that was when he understood he would never meet anyone like Solji. So he ends the video saying, "Now I understand that compared to me, you are an incredible person. This is how this beautiful story ends."